If you are attending virtually, please ensure you are muted and your initial presentation and discussion. So I'll turn it back over to the chair.
All right. Our first item to do is to approve the minutes from the Monday, March 10th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move. I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
And so approved. We're ready for public comment?
Yep.
General public comment.
General public comment.
General public comment.
Not comment on the trails.
Is there any general public comment tonight? Nothing that's on the agenda. We did get, Chair, we did get an email from someone that's saying that they were going to be here to talk about converting the pickleball courts back to tennis courts in North Lawrence, but they said they'd be here, and I don't know if they're virtual. Kurt, is there anybody on virtually?
Not that I see.
Okay, so they may come, and it's past the time, so we'll go ahead and continue.
All right. So then on to our regular agenda items, the Cameron's Bluff Mountain Bike Trail presentation.
You've used this before, haven't you?
A few times.
Yeah.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the advisory board, thank you for the opportunity to talk about a potential project, a set of mountain bike trails in an area that has been referred to as Cameron's Bluff. This first slide is actually the cover of a report that was prepared by the International Mountain Biking Association, which came to Lawrence, I believe it was 2023 now, to conduct an initial assessment of the appropriate use of that area for trails, and would like to talk a little bit about the findings of that report and what we hope some of the next steps might be. As a way of introduction, I know many of you know me with multiple hats. I am here in the capacity of my role as chair of Friends of Lawrence Area Trails, local nonprofit organization, and have Sarah Hill Nelson here with me, who I think you also probably also know with many hats, but is representing Friends of the Caw, which are, those organizations are two of the partners that's really been integrally involved in this process almost since the beginning. In fact, here are some of the key partners that have been involved in these discussions over the last couple of years. I won't read through the list, nor did we include specifically on this list Evergy Power, but Evergy plays a key role because the actual land that is being proposed for use is land owned and utilized by Evergy, who's been very involved in these discussions since the beginning. I won't read this either, but this area, Cameron's Bluff, there's an excerpt from the Lawrence Daily Gazette that notes that in 1895 they were referring to this area as Cameron's Bluff because Hugh Cameron, who some of you may have heard of, local character in Lawrence lore, apparently lived in some sort of treehouse in that area back in the late 1800s. And so that moniker has been around for quite some time. My apologies that these are relatively small, but wanted to give a sense of the study area, and particularly what I would direct you to is the graphic in the lower right-hand corner, which shows in the bottom left-hand corner that graphic Burcham Park. So we're looking at the Kansas River, as it goes north towards I-70. And the proposed area of the project is actually just to the far right side of this map, would be on the west bank of the Kansas River, where it turns west north of I-70. We certainly think that this is an important project and wanted to acknowledge that we also believe it aligns very, very well with the strategic work of the city. If you look at the city, the downtown master plan really calls for establishing connections to the river and making sure that Lawrence is viewed and utilized as a destination for parks and recreation. I know you all also recently went through the process of completing a Parks and Rec master plan, which also certainly notes the importance of parks, including linear parks and trails to our community. So this is more of a close-up of the area that is proposed for use. The green area right along the river would be, which is a wooded area along the river, would be used for the development of recreational shared use trails. We're probably looking at a loop of somewhere around 6-7 miles, but that would all be something that would be determined as part of a future planning effort once there was a decision to proceed. Part of the challenge is because this area lies north of I-70, there is a little bit of an issue of how do you gain access. And there are several potential access points. A couple of those would, if you think about the area around O'Malley Beverage, there where Michigan turns west, there are some potential access points, but certainly the optimal access point, as IMBO was looking at this study, would be to develop a trail north out of Burcham Park along the river, connecting to this area just north of I-70. A question in that process was how to gain access, given that a number of the properties between Burcham Park and this site are privately held property. This is a picture of the Douglas GIS that has the various property lines associated with the property. I pulled up a second screenshot that just demonstrates one example of one piece of property just north of Burcham Park that is held by a private landowner. So there is a question either of easement access or acquisition of property in order to accomplish what the International Mountain Biking Association saw as the optimal way to access these trails. This is the city GIS system, which actually shows the presence, and I know it's really hard to see, but along the west side of the river, there are two parallel red lines, which specifies an existing recreational easement. When we began this process, we weren't completely certain of the legality of the easement, and so asked the city through Parks and Rec to look and see, is this a valid easement? And I think part of the reason we're here at this juncture is that fairly recently received a communication from legal counsel that believes this is a valid recreational easement that could be potentially utilized to develop a trail. So we're really excited about the possibility of another set of mountain bike trails. We know that the North Lawrence River trails are really well utilized. We've got trails out at Clinton Lake that are an asset that members of our community really love. We've got trails at places like the Baker Wetlands, all of which are relatively easy to access, Burns Loop, but perhaps none as easy. And that would be if it was to continue north to KTA-owned land, it might then be possible, and KTA is amenable, to creating a trail to the west on KTA property over to Michigan, which would be one mechanism to connect Burcham Park to where the trail currently ends at Michigan. KDOT has awarded the city a grant, which I think the city has had for 3 or 4 years at this point, and have been struggling with an alignment that deals with property acquisition and some of those other issues. So if we are still stuck trying to figure out an alignment through partnership with KTA, I think there's a ready option here in place that this trail could potentially also be used for, and love the idea that there could be dual purpose to the work. But regardless of whether or not that would be an option for completing the loop, you know, the development of the Cameron's Bluff Trail is something we're super, super excited about. Sarah's been involved much longer than I have, so I did the broad brush, but I've probably left out some details. So Sarah, if you have anything to add, or if you have any questions, she's probably gonna have 2 or 3 answers for every answer that I have. So.
Do you want me to just hold down the fort together up here? Do you want to say?
Sorry, I can't see you guys.
Yeah.
This feels a little awkward.
We can go down.
Does it go down?
In the wrong direction.
So my name is Sarah Hill Nelson, and I really started working on this about 20 years ago, 21, maybe even 22, but it actually wasn't my idea. Brad Lovelace, who was at the time worked for Westar, now Evergy, and then later became the head of Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, came to me and said, hey, you know, Evergy has this land up here, which is beautiful, and it would be a great amenity to the community if you could continue a trail up there. So I've really been pecking away at this for the last 20 years, and you know, ran into some challenges along the way, and then mostly I think the key is the access. But I was able to, I applied for a Trails Accelerator grant from the International Mountain Bicycling Association to try to get some outside validation that this is really worth pursuing. So they do work all over the country, and the first year we didn't get the grant, so I went back and applied again, and we had great community support that did matching dollars for us to be able to get the grant, thanks to all of those people and businesses. And so they came, and they were really struck by how beautiful the property is and how you can be so close to town, but you feel quite far away. It's really quite pretty, and you're along the river the whole way. And so for me, I think one of my goals as a community member, I see the Kansas River as this incredible asset we have in our community, whether you're on the river or next to the river, whether you're fishing or birding or biking or hiking. And it's something that we, well, I feel our business is a little bit of an impediment, honestly, to people have access to the river. So I have a personal commitment to trying to figure out ways that we can encourage more access to that area. So it's just been something I've been working on for a long time, and I credit Brad Lovelace for the idea and IMBA for coming to the site and saying, you know, this is really worth pursuing. And I really appreciate the property owner, Mr. Allen, was there with us when IMBA came. He walked through the property with us, and he is the person that owns the private property just north of the boathouse. So at the time, we were not aware of the legality of that recreational easement, so that is the thing that changes this, that is a potential opportunity. So, so that's hence the timing. And I think what we're here to do is to answer questions, talk about the project, brainstorm with you all, ultimately to go forward on this. Much of this area is in the county. You know, some of it's in the city, some of it's in the county, but we see it as worthy of pursuit and something that meets the city's KPIs, that meets the main goal of the downtown master plan. It would have the potential to close the Lawrence Loop, There are just a lot of opportunities there that we think are really worthy of consideration. So we're here to answer questions. And
Before we ask questions, Luis, what would you expect from us in this session?
And I don't think we expect anything, but I believe you wanted public, the part of the grant was public engagement, right?
Yes.
So this was our attempt to have the board hear what would go out to the community for further input, and I'll let them decide what that next portion is, because it's their project until it becomes a city project.
How would
right?
this, I'm a little confused.
Oh, okay.
How would this fit into the comprehensive plan? I mean,
One of them is continuing to increase our trails and trail access. One of our KPIs for the city is proximity to trails and continuing the expansion of that. I think.
so it's consistent with the comp plan?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
With the comprehensive master plan.
Okay, good.
Which is one of the highest priorities in there, which is continuing to expand our trailways.
Okay.
And we, as far as the public process, it's something that, we see to make something like this happen requires collaboration. So obviously, number one, Evergy, and we're very grateful for their willingness to open up their property to the public. And as part of the grant, then, the next step would be to hold a public meeting and to share this concept at an event with, like, something at the library, where people would be able to come and say, well, this is what we'd like to see in the park, or this is what we want everybody's input and feedback, concerns, suggestions, to try to go about this the most effective way we can. One of the first things we did do was work with Courtney Masterson, and Evergy actually paid for an environmental analysis of the area. We brought in all these experts from KU. We had the herpetologists and the tree people and the bat people in, and everybody came in, and the conclusion of that report, which we can share with Parks and Rec, was that this is a site worthy of ecological restoration. And they did not find anything with the site that, we just wanted to make sure there wasn't a special bird or bat or anything that that it wouldn't be a good idea to have trails there. So that was one of the first things we did, was make sure that wouldn't be an issue. So I think the next step for us is really community engagement, and we see the city of Lawrence as a core driver in this, and the county as well. And we have had conversations with the county also. I mean, they've been engaged in discussions.
What I think is really exciting about it is just the potential to leverage resources to the extent that, Evergy has the property, their green team is interested in construction. Sarah has committed to work with Flat and others to raise private funding that would be needed to do the planning of the trails themselves. We've got, I think, all of the right players at the table in this process. We are, as Sarah said, committed through the grant to do some sort of public event. If that could be something we could do collaboratively with Parks and Rec, we would love the opportunity to do that. We obviously would need to engage Evergy kind of in the next phases of what does the planning process look like on site. We don't have a definitive list of next steps for the access trail, and that is part of what we are here to do, is to hear your questions, hear your concerns, think about what would an appropriate process look like to potentially utilize and along the river trail to create access to that area. So I don't think we have
John
a
had it.
definitive.
Okay, well, I just want to say that I find this very attractive, but what I find most attractive is the possibility of completing a section of the Lawrence Loop. I think that's, if we can get more progress on that, I just think that's.
There is a railroad crossing.
Yeah, we did discuss that with IMBA. So one of the safety issues with Burcham Park is that the train stops and traps people in Burcham Park. And so that is the egress to our business. And daily, I watch people, this just happened 2 weeks ago, the train stops and sometimes for over an hour. And I'm watching people climb through between the cars to get out. The person at the KU, that worked at the KU boathouse, saw children dragging their bikes under the train to escape Burcham Park. Because and it's a regular occurrence. So in the last 3 weeks, it's happened, maybe last month, it's probably happened at least 3 times, you have to call and report the train stoppage, and I'm calling the meeting that I'm supposed to be going to, and I'm like, I'm behind the train, can't leave. So I see this as actually a safety benefit. There are railroad grants right now that are available to alleviate issues like this. So as you leave the park, and can you back up just a couple slides? Do I have control or do you have? Oh, do I just back there?
Control, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So see where it does say IMBA suggested, the International Mountain Bicycling Association, they suggested a box culvert under the railroad tracks, and it is low. You could go above. I think that would probably be more expensive. I will say, I live and breathe on this property just because I'm there every day. The last time I saw that property inundated was May 5th of 2015. I mean, I think there are times when there are segments of the loop that are inundated, just like in Baker Wetlands, or when you go under by Broken Arrow Park, and there are parts that. But I would say, at that point, then by that time, all of Burcham Park's underwater. So nobody's biking it anyway. So I think there are funds to address the cost of either going over or under the railroad, but there are also significant safety benefits that make that very, there's a win there. One person I saw, these grandparents, this was my friend, her grandparents were crossing, and their little grandkids were on the bikes in front of them, crossed in front of the track, and then the train come through. The grandparents were on one side, and the grandkids were on the other. So it is an issue, and I think it's something that we want to address as a community, and I think this is an opportunity to do that. So Mr. Nalbandian, I think, yes, I think the potential to close the loop, I mean, that's another piece of this that I find significant value in, but I think also that even without closing the loop, if you can run a dirt trail up, I mean, I'm always like, low-hanging fruit. What can we do if Evergy is willing to help us build the trail? It's probably about $18,000 to $20,000 to design good trails up there, but we then have, Evergy has committed, people and equipment, so the overall costs are actually quite low to create a similar type of riding or hiking experience that we have downstream at our existing river trails. So I think, even if you were just to baby step it and say, how can we open up this property? We're the state with, I think, the second to the lowest amount of publicly available land for recreation in the nation. And the fact that it's so close to downtown, so close to neighborhoods that are very socioeconomically diverse, close to Burt Nash, close to the hospital, where people can get out to walk and be outside, I think is particularly appealing for me. So I think I like loop closure, and I think there's potentially a double win here.
I want to add that I also think that it does seem to be a real opportunity, and I'm glad that you are here to continue this process of engagement, to continue to talk to stakeholders so that you can keep the process moving forward. I am curious about so the easement sounds like a good thing, but obviously it is something that you need to still negotiate with the landowners.
Right.
Have you spoken with all of the landowners?
Well, the easement goes through one private landowner, and Mr. Allen's here, so I'm sure you'll hear from him in public comment. And Mr. Allen and I have been talking about this for for 20 years, so I don't see him right now. I think he's somewhere in here. But so, you know, I think originally I want to point out that I should have, in this, see where it says proposed bike skills park in this lower right-hand graphic. And it is difficult to see. Sorry, I was kind of building this when I was on my...
Purple?
It's a little purple squiggly line.
And it says Skills Park?
It says proposed bike skills park. And that was put on there. Gould Evans graciously put together this really cool brochure because it was nice for me to be able to share it with people to say, here's the vision. Yeah, it's that one, and thank you. And so at that time, I was talking with Mr. Allen, and there was a period of time where Mr. Allen had said, yes, I'm interested in selling the property. So that was why that was there. And then I went to Douglas County Community Foundation, and Douglas County Community Foundation said, absolutely, we can raise funds for this. Like, let's go to Mr. Allen and buy the property. But then since that time, Mr. Allen had decided that he did not want to sell the property. So I think this is something we have to work through with the community. As a community, have to work through with Mr. Allen. We did find it is a legal easement. I mean, and there, you know, we all have sort of easements on our property for various things, and you know, we want to work with Mr. Allen in the very best way we possibly can. We think that is potential significant benefit to the community at large to use this easement that was put in place. It's specifically a recreation easement that was put in place in the late 1980s.
Thanks for blowing that up. Because the purple was part of that Gould Evans brochure that was developed multiple years ago, but is not part of the IMBA. It's not part of the IMBA proposal. The IMBA proposal focuses on the Evergy property and talks about the easement just as one of the potential access points.
And so that where the purple line is Mr. Allen's property, and he does farm that land.
Okay.
So that is his private property.
And what is the history of the usage? Is that just all floodplain where the orange section where the bluff trails will be, or has it ever been agriculture or? Well,
the area now, okay, so this is really interesting because a lot of it's actually aggregated land. So then I'm about to dive into something a tiny bit more complex, but is it possible to do the city GIS to look at it where we can, and then we could kind of hone in on it? So when I actually first started reaching out to Kansas Turnpike Authority and saying, hey, could we use this property to put trails on it? Kansas Turnpike Authority said, well, all this land that the city of Lawrence says belongs to us doesn't belong to us. Here's our original plat. And it's all this land that was aggregated since like the 51 flood. So technically, it's not, it doesn't belong to KTA, and KTA has said, you can have it, we don't want it. So the state actually has a process for when there is land that's aggregated, that you can go through a process with the Secretary of State, and that land can be given to like a not-for-profit. So for example, Friends of the Caw has done that with a section of land that's like further downstream. So the question is it floodplain? Yes. So none of it is developable. And, you know, Evergy is, you know, you have to work hand in glove with Evergy about like, where do the trails go? We need to make sure that they're not, because Evergy might at some point want to, for example, take clay from a certain area or use as a borrow pit, or they might want to store dirt there. And they understand that, you know, we build trails in collaboration with Evergy because they know where that land is, they know where that, and so we've worked hand in glove with Evergy the entire time. They were on site for all of the ecological assessments, all of the walkthroughs, and so the area, you know, so some of it is like on a little lower bench that's like lower down. There's like the aggregated land is a little bit lower than, say, the farmland that's up a little higher. Thank you. So here's the flood. You can see what is considered floodplain. so there's the river running right up there, and then I'm trying to locate where we are in my, it's a little further north.
Yeah, you're too far south, you need to go.
Yeah,
go
trying to
up
share.
Hold on,
past
I'm
the
sharing it real
70.
quick. Okay, so we're,
Yeah, just keep going up,
Up.
upriver.
it's not letting me go up. It's,
There you go.
Keep going.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, there you go. So, and maybe, you know, you might, there you go. So there you can see, this is the I-70 bridge that's crossing along the bottom. And then this whole, the very long yellow piece, the furthest lot that looks like that one you have your arrow on right now, much of that is actually aggregated land. So we then worked with Douglas County. I worked with their surveyor. We have all the documentation of, you know, the original plats, how those pieces of property have evolved over time. So, you know, how we, you know, someone decided to make that Friends of the Caw. I mean, right now it's essentially no man's land, but it's all bordered by Evergy property, except for some of it, like the very bottom is KTA. And KTA's actual slice is quite small. And KTA has been said, you can have it. I mean, they don't have need for it. And then in that same time, they gave us permission. We have a letter from them that says they support the concept of putting a trail in at the base of I-70, much like what they did where we ran the culvert under the KTA access, which is a fabulous part of the loop, I have to say, is great. And then that would connect right up to the brand new section of the loop right there on Michigan.
I'd just like to close by saying we really appreciate the opportunity. You know, and as I said, we need to figure out what some of those next steps would be. This trail is a little unique in the sense that, you know, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, unlike the bike plan, doesn't have a picture of where things go. So there's no picture of we need to have this trail here. The bike plan is probably unlikely to feature this trail because the bike plan focuses on transportation, whereas this would be a primarily recreational use, unless it was decided that part of it could be used to close the loop. So I do think it's going to take advocates both within and those of us who are advocating for this outside of government to figure out a way to ensure that it is a priority, because I think it kind of, you know, falls in the cracks a bit if there aren't folks who are saying this is an important asset for our community.
Any other questions?
Can we ask questions after we hear from the public?
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
I had just a basic question. The surface is, dirt.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if you decided to close the loop, that section would be done to loop standards.
Right.
You know, but the proposed trails at Cameron's Bluff are all proposed to be dirt trails. And they would be walking, biking, but also access for fishing. You know, because you can get all the way up around the river, and it's surprisingly open. Like the understory is really, it's quite walkable.
Okay.
So. And I want to thank Mr. Allen. I hope he's here. Is he behind it?
I think he,
But, oh, there you are. But I've worked with Mr. Allen. I started calling Mr. Allen about 20 years ago. We went for coffee. He was very helpful to us when the IMBA team came. And I just want to acknowledge that, you know, this is his private property. I am grateful that there is this recreation easement there. And I just think we want to work in a really collaborative and respectful way, however we go forward with this. So, thank you.
Thanks.
public comment.
So if there are any public comment, we are open to that. Please come up and state your name and your zip code.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, I hadn't really planned on being at this, but after talking to Sarah, I needed to be here. So Diane Menzie, I'm with the North Lawrence Improvement Association. And we're actually in the process of expanding some of the things that are going to benefit the city and pedestrian traffic. And one of them is a pedestrian bridge across Locust Street at 4th Street, because that's also a school crossing. And so we have been talking and we have been sending emails and everything to the railroad, because there is money available with a grant to make that bridge happen. But what is happening is no one from the city is answering any of these emails or giving us any information on it. And associations, neighborhood associations, are not allowed to submit information for the grants. So the city has to take charge of this to see if we can get this money to do that. And it's also a very big safety issue for North Lawrence and stuff. And then Sarah and I were talking that there's a possibility that that would actually be part of, what was that, Sarah?
Well, that it has been also suggested that if the trail were to go north to I-70, you could then hang a pedestrian bridge off I-70 to connect to the levee site. So you could have like another little mini loop there, particularly if, as
Right.
Diane Menzie suggested, that you did a pedestrian bridge across 4th Street, you could walk up the levee, cross I-70, and then come back on the Burcham Park Trail, which is also, I think that is the most, is that the most popular section of the loop?
Along the river.
Along
Yeah.
the river, yeah. So just other opportunities, if we're thinking decades out, for a vision of connectivity, what Diane suggested and the I-70 crossing makes for people to be able to really leverage that river corridor on both sides, up and down the river.
Yeah, and there's a North Lawrence meeting tonight, and that's why I wanted to come too, so that I could bring some of this information to our meeting tonight and stuff. So that's at 7 o'clock, and we've been working very hard to try and get some of this done and everything, so it's important to us. So thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, can you tell me who in the city you've sent that information?
You know, I don't have that information. I could have Ted Boyle give you that information.
You can just email us or email Mark if there's somebody that.
Yeah, there's, and then our IT guy, he's the one that has actually sent the emails.
Okay.
And Ted would probably know just exactly, you know, when they were and stuff. I don't have access to it.
Okay,
but-
no, that's fine. If
Okay.
we can get it to us, that'd be
Okay.
great. We can follow up.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Kate Curl. I live in the Pinckney neighborhood. This is my first time coming to a public meeting to give comments. But I read about this in the paper yesterday, and it got me that excited that I came down today to come talk, really say how excited I am about this proposed plan. I've been in Lawrence for about 4 years now, in the Pinckney neighborhood for 2. And one of the things that really drew me to Lawrence was it's a bike town. The river's a beautiful asset that we have, and I just love how that this project would help bring those assets out more. It's what draws people to Lawrence. I work in Lenexa, and I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with coworkers who say, "Oh, Lawrence, I love the river trails. I love going down the river. I love being downtown." And so I think that's something that we really just need to lean into more here, because it really makes this a special place to live. So I also just wanted to mention, I really like this idea of the Burcham Park connection. I think someone on the board mentioned too how trying to close the loop is just something that I know Lawrence has been working on for years, and this seems like a really exciting way to do that. Burcham Park is a really beautiful part of the trail, but it is kind of disconnected on both sides from the loop. And so if you could connect this side, I think you're not only connecting Burcham Park, but you're also really connecting downtown to this area as well. And I think it just has many, many benefits to the community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something. My name is Jeff Allen. One of the reasons I've resisted this trail going across the property is the incursion on nature. My mother was a big Humane Society contributor. She wanted everything left the same. we're talking about how we can benefit the people of Lawrence, we can benefit this group, we can make this more accessible, we can make it easier for these people to go all over the place, but we haven't talked about nature yet. Running a scar through the property down there would create a barrier for a lot of animals who live near or on the river. There's a marshland down there. It would disrupt that. I'm not sure the exact location of this. But when you create a scar the way they did on the west side of Michigan Street, that makes it very uninvited for a property owner to allow that kind of scar to go through their property. There's, as the gentleman said, we've got lots of bicycle trails. We've got them, people love them, they're just all over the place. Do we need another one? At the sacrifice of nature. We've got an eagle down there nesting now. I doubt that we would have that if we had a trail and bicyclists running through there. I don't know how many bicyclists you get on the loop right now, but I know one bicyclist that says when he goes around the loop and he gets to the end, he turns around. He doesn't have to take that extra, or he can take Michigan Street. So one other thing I might say is that this committee does not have all the people at the table. Contrary to what they've said, they do not. I have not been involved with this. This is the first time that I've heard about $137,000 to $300,000 and some thousand to design and build this trail. When Sarah and I were talking several years ago, I said, okay, finally, I can acquiesce to your request, but here are my requirements. First of all, it can't be a scar. I said, you know, as long as there's a permeable surface for these people to ride on, that's all right. I would give you a license to do that. You cannot go in there and build a 10-foot concrete path alongside the river and call that nature. That just doesn't fly. I hear all this talk, and the people that are working on this are working night and day around the clock in order to figure out how they can work around the ownership of a property without having to pay them. Basically, this easement that I've heard about, I understood it to be a high water easement on the river, and it only went up to the high water mark, is about 3/4 of the way up the bank of the river. It does not extend onto any property to the west. So this what I call a taking of the use is basically, you know, we've tried everything except paying them money for it. I've offered Sarah, okay, you can use the property, but here's how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost this much on a yearly basis. It's going to be a 10-year license, renewable every year for $5,000 a year. If you have 400 bicyclists on that trail, that comes out to be about $1 per person per month. Since that time, I've grown more stubborn. I just don't see the need for this. I can see a huge scar through this. I can see nature being forced off my ground up to the north, where people are not as receiving as nature as I am. I don't allow any hunting down there, trespassing. I've got unhoused people living down there now that I will allow to stay on there because they have no other place to go.
I'm sorry, but unfortunately.
Yeah, I know, you're out of town. But I just want to bring up all these points to you before somebody makes a decision that's going to directly affect me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yep.
Question for Chris and Sarah. Did you receive a copy of the written public comment that we received from an individual? I was wondering, can I ask them to address those points?
You can, yes.
good.
If it's
Yeah.
not public.
I would
Yeah,
love for you to address
we
them.
placed it on the agenda as well, so it's on.
Should I, may I, okay. And I do want to say to Mr. Allen that we would love to be able to buy the property and pay fair market value for it, and we talked about that. So I hope we can continue this conversation, just really in an open and ongoing way. So this was a comment that said they had this question. Okay, the first one was annexation and county impact. And it says the plan lacks information on annexation and Douglas County service budget impacts, and this project is outside city limits north of Burcham Park. And that is one of the things we've talked about through the course of this, is that some of this property is on city property and some of this property is on county property. So that's a great question. Would it need to be annexed? Is this a project that's a collaborative city-county project? Does it require annexation? I think that there's not an answer for that yet. It could take any number of avenues forward there. With regard to budget impacts, I think that, Chris, do you remember, what was the dollar figure that was in the paper? That I didn't know exactly what that was referencing. And you might have to look. I think, and Mr. Allen, you just referenced it to the 100 and whatever. When we think about what these costs are right now, the costs are designing the trail and then building the trail. If we're talking about not the loop, right, which is a separate thing, but just for Cameron's Bluff, it would be to get someone that's a professional to design the trail to maximize the area. Especially for biking trails, you don't want it to have like a hard ride or, you just want it to be laid out thoughtfully. And so that is about $18,000, and I had said that I would fundraise for that. Like I've already received offers through the community. The people said that they would help us pay for that. Other costs to the city are Evergy's giving the land for free. Evergy said the green team would. They have the equipment, they have the people, lots volunteer dollars and donations primarily. With regard to maintenance going forward, because we run the hydroelectric power plant, and this is within our Mill Pond area, typically we're licensed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So typically when projects are licensed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they often do recreational amenities. So for example, this fishing deck below our North Powerhouse was done as a part of our license commitment. So this is not something that we had committed to in our license, but we feel that it would be a community asset, so we said that Bowersock would spearhead the maintenance going forward. So with regard to costs for just the Cameron's Bluff, the lower river trails were basically renegade built in the 1980s by local volunteers, and they're maintained by volunteers. So I don't know if the city contributes any dollars towards the maintenance of those, and you guys could answer that for me, but we can, that's, I think it's a low cost. Okay, private land acquisition. This person points out that the proposed bike skill park trails is entirely consumes an individual's parcel of farmland, and that's the thing that I brought up earlier, where early on, Mr. Allen had said he'd be willing to sell it, and that's a relic of, and my IT failure for not removing that. So I hope that addresses that question. Unsheltered encampments. The plan lacks controls for unsheltered encampments. Increased trail access could grow existing encampments north of Burcham Park and place the burden of eviction on private landowners. And I would say right now we are deep in the struggle. I live and work in the river. I'm there all the time, every day. And there is, as Mr. Allen referenced, a significant encampment on his property. And I regularly am encountering, we've had lots of issues, where we've had, someone was killed right by my car, like we've got people knifed by my car, like it is an issue. It's an issue with trash. I worry about the sanitation on Mr. Allen's property, like where do those people go to the bathroom? What is happening with their trash? Like I acknowledge that there are serious problems with homeless encampments, but we have that problem today. And what we find is that the more you put positive use into an area, the less negative use we see. So I'm proud of the city for expanding our opportunities for homeless individuals in the community. We now have we're increasing our opportunities for people to have safe places to stay that are not environmentally damaging. So I see this as potentially improving that. The rest of the property is Evergy's private property, and they have had issues with homeless camping, and they have to evict them. Just so I don't see significant change there. Landfill health and safety. One of the things I thought that was pretty interesting, the person that wrote this letter lives, right there, very, very close to this property. So that person's home is closer than most of Cameron's Bluff. There are businesses, all that are much closer proximity to that fly ash landfill. The Kansas River abuts that fly ash landfill. So if there are issues with that fly ash landfill, Evergy has done very good work to try to prevent any leaching out into that soil. And I will say, if that's a problem for people riding their bikes through Cameron's Bluff, we have a lot of other pretty significant things to worry about. We do draw all of our water from a daily basis. 50% of our water comes from the Kansas River day in, day out. So, so that's how I would address that question. Emergency access. I agree that additional access would be fantastic, which is why I love the idea of closing the loop, because it just puts that much more potential access. There is also the potential access up north, which, now maybe I'm off the PowerPoint now. But up north, there's another potential access that goes from where Harvesters is now, or where, you guys remember where the Reuter Organ Building, O'Malley Beverage up there. There is another potential access at that point that also has to cross the railroad. So long-term, I definitely can see multiple points of ingress, egress. If you could do that northern access point, that'd be amazing, because people could leave downtown Lawrence, bike up and get out on the Farmers Turnpike, which opens up hundreds and hundreds of miles of gravel riding where people can leave town safely on their bikes and not have to be on a road. So, anytime you have a trail at Clinton Park, anywhere, national parks, any kind of park, there are, we're not always on concrete. And that does, I think that's a part of when you choose to recreate outside, away from concrete. That's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. So, but does anyone else have any other questions? Did you feel like I addressed those questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I did have another question. Thank you.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier that your assessment indicated that, like, an overall finding that the area is worthy of ecological restoration.
Yeah.
And Mr. Allen raised some concerns. Could you speak to the extent to which this plan supports ecological restoration, maybe in the face of increased numbers of people there?
Yeah. So that was Courtney Masterson spearheaded that study. Much of the Evergy property has been inundated by invasive species, like Johnson grass and the invasive honeysuckle. And if you restore native habitat there, it also actually there's also potential for FEMA dollars, because if you put in deep-rooted prairie grasses, it becomes a sponge. So when we do have high water events, that whole area essentially becomes like a sponge for some of that water. So I will say we had the KU birders. I mean, that was the purpose of that analysis, was to say, would these trails negatively impact any species? I mean, the Lawrence River Trail is one of the most heavily used trails downstream in the city of Lawrence. The wildlife there is significant. Deer, they have not shown ever any impacts to any of the avian species. We had Lawrence Audubon involved. We had, trying to make sure that we were going to do this appropriately. So to date, we have not seen any negative impacts. I would say my concern about environmental impacts right now, I have profound concerns about the environmental impacts of the homeless camping on that property. So right now, where the recreation easement is a significant homeless encampment. And they are cutting down trees, burning trees, and all that trash ends up in the river, and we end up getting it at Bowersock. I now have my staff, we have to have Narcan, because we're talking about fentanyl, methamphetamine, opioids that are getting into our river that I find a deep concern. So if you ask me about my level of concern about fecal matter, trash, heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and all of that versus a dirt trail going through the area, I feel that that positive use significantly outweighs, especially if we can take efforts to return native species to the area. I think that's a great question, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that,
Yeah.
just very briefly, if I could. I assume most of you know Courtney Masterson, but if you do not, she is the head of the Native Lands Restoration Collaborative, which is a nonprofit that works to preserve and restore prairie and other natural landscapes. And I just wanted to quote quickly from her report. It says, there is a potential to restore native vegetation throughout the site through management of aggressive non-native species and invasive species in combination with plantings and prescribed burns. This report concluded that restoring a landscape of this size would provide invaluable resources to wildlife, residents of Douglas County, and visitors to the area. Native vegetation is the foundation of a biodiverse system, providing improved soil and water quality and habitat for native animals in a vitally important wildlife corridor along the Kansas River. So, we certainly want to be ecologically responsible as we move through environmentally responsible as we move through this process. But at least to date, I think due diligence has been observed to ensure that environmental concerns are part of this process, and we certainly would want to ensure, like Mr. Allen said, that they continued to be if this project were pursued.
I have a question then. Courtney Masterson said that this has the potential to have ecological restoration. Is it your intention then that any proposal you put forth will in fact propose ecological restoration?
I certainly would hope so. Again, we're at the first stages of kind of public engagement around this, and I would very much like to see that be part of this effort as we move forward. As Sarah alluded, when I've had one opportunity to traipse through the area and saw a lot of the invasive species that have been mentioned, and Courtney and her team are very eager to be part of that process. The Friends of the Kaw has sponsored a lot of native restoration along the river, and so I think the involvement of Friends of the Kaw provides us an opportunity to build on existing efforts to do that. So I can't speak for the project at this point. I'd certainly hope that that would be built into whatever solution is proposed.
I guess going forward then, obviously you're still in the planning stages. What is the strategy then? Who will be getting this moving in a more formal sort of way?
Well, as I noted, there have been meetings between the city, county Evergy and some of these proposed partners, and I think any first step in the process is going to need to entail bringing those partners together again to figure out how do all the puzzle pieces fit together. I don't think we've got a clear vision of what all of those puzzle pieces are and how they fit together at this point, and I think it would take all of those partners to begin to craft a vision moving forward. We'd just like to see it continue to move forward. And so tonight I think is a kind of a first step to re-envision that process. You know, when we met with the county, they said we recognize that some of this is county land, but it is a city easement, so the city needs to really likely take the kind of the lead role in the discussion around the easement now that that has at least to some degree been addressed. I think those partners need to come back together and figure out what those next steps are.
And I would just say we're here to ask for your help and for your guidance. I mean, obviously I haven't been that effective since it's taken me like 21 years so far. Sorry. But we can't really do this you know, I mean, I am obligated to host, as under that grant, a public meeting. We would love to have a public meeting that was all the grant partners and City of Lawrence Parks and Rec and Douglas County, and have a public meeting and get community engagement to consider this going forward. So I think that would be a great step, and I think it could be a great thing for the river corridor and for the community of Lawrence as a whole. I'm not sure how much more, I mean, we can host a public meeting on our own, but.
No, I would offer our presence, for sure, in those. And in my, my letter to Flat and Sarah stating that we had researched the easement and that it was found by our legal department to be intact, that the expectation was that we would be involved in every step of the way.
Okay.
I can't make any commitments financially right now to it, but as it starts to develop, we start to see those things potentially shape up. You know, talking about public-private partnership is essential in this conversation. Mm-hmm. That's not our land. That's not, you know, so it's going to take a little bit of a village to make this happen, and we will do our part to see this. We see the value in it. So the conversations are just now getting stirred up, and that's why our invitation and, you know, what is the next step? The easement was the first step, identifying it. We got through that. Well, not the first step. I'm sure you've taken many.
That's right.
But to the next progressive step. And so now it's about, let's have the conversation and see how this shapes up, and, you know, who will do what the responsibilities are, and how it fits within our capacity, our resources, our CIP, and all that. But sort of getting it out in the public sphere. So that the conversations can be well informed.
Thank you. Thank you all for.
Can I ask Mark a question? Is it too late?
No, but he'll need a microphone. Oh, I guess he can stand.
Mark probably knows what I'm going to ask about this routing of the Lawrence Loop. Mm-hmm. How feasible is that?
Probably the biggest obstacle is the rail crossing. So, you know, if we go down along the base of KTA easement, that's easy. Now, if we want to try to fly over a railroad, then we're going to have to climb the embankment and get over the top. So that's an engineering question, and what's the cost of that? Going underneath the railroad could probably work. I'm concerned about flooding because I've seen that piece of property with water on it. So, you know, we can look at it from an engineering point of view and try to come up with a cost, but we haven't done that yet.
Meanwhile, have you been working on other alignments for that, for connecting Burcham Park to Michigan Street?
Michigan to Sanders Shaw's currently been designed. We're in property acquisition phase, and we have a grant for it. So we'll see how the acquisition goes.
What's the timeline on that?
Pretty short term, in the next few months.
Where does this fit in terms of the capital improvement plan budget? that exists now?
This current route to Cameron's Bluff,
Yeah.
it's not in the CIP. So in the CIP defines the filling in the loop. So there's 3 sections of the loop that still need to be completed.
Oh, so it is consistent?
Yeah, there's a downtown section, there's the Michigan to Sanders Shaw,
Yeah, but I
then
mean,
there's
it's consistent.
northwest.
It's consistent with the plan or the budget?
The current CIP talks about the trail that's been proposed from Michigan to Sanders Shaw. So that's what's in the CIP and funded. So if we go a different route, we would basically have to start over with design, grant funding. So we don't know if the grant could just be applied to a different route.
Yeah, so we have a lot of discovery yet to do. This is pretty fresh conversation. As we look at long-term planning, especially as it relates to CIP, we need to look at these options. Right now, the intention is to go through that identified design trail, but that might not be where we end.
Yeah, so.
Especially since it's not a funded.
The more attention you pay to this, it means you're gonna pay less attention to something else.
Correct. There's a trade-off. But thank you for supporting that principle.
Are you concerned about that, John?
Yep. I am, because of all the time that was spent,
That's one.
you know, in developing
Are there any other questions from
plan,
the board? And we need to move on
project.
to the next.
I mean, I think we all, maybe we're a little naive in thinking that that would be what would, we'd be operating from that.
Public comments closed at this point.
Are there any more questions from the board? Unfortunately, public comment is closed.
Well, I didn't know this was going to be a rebuttal issue, but I've been rebutted, so I should have the opportunity.
No, sir,
to
that's
rebut
not,
that.
no, public comment is over. This was questions that,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so public comment, 3 minutes at the beginning or after.
All right.
Well,
All right.
that was a good discussion, and appreciate everybody's time and questions. So we need to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the 2026 budget update.
Okay, I'll be as quick as possible. We've been asked, as you know, by the City Commission, thank you, everybody, for attending. I'll give you a few minutes so you can. All right, so as you know, we've been going through the budget process since end of last year. We've received some target numbers, I think I mentioned last time, for our department to reduce. Most departments received that. Ours, in the end, after the balancing act between the commission, the community member, employee committees, and public, which we received 600 plus input from the public, our final target in reductions is $1.8 million from our budget. That is approximately 10% of our general fund operating expenses. So we're devising a plan to make the reductions in those areas that were identified inside of the balancing act and the rubric that we provided, and trying to connect the reductions to those. In some cases, it doesn't make sense because we'd lose more money by taking a reduction than we do by making them. So we're also looking at those opportunities to not have to reduce so much. We're looking at the net result of some of the programs. So over the next, I guess over the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, we will be coming up with a final budget that looks like we're going to be reducing a little bit over $1 million from our outdoor parks, trails, and open spaces budget, as well as golf operations, approximately $1 million there, and another approximate almost $800,000 from recreation program and program facilities. The majority of the reductions are going to be visible with reduced levels of service in parks. Not all of them. We've identified some where mowing may be reduced in frequency, where we may not replace an aging shelter or a restroom that we can no longer maintain. So there will be there will be visible effects of this in that area. So it's vehicle replacement that we traditionally do on a certain cycle, that's going to be extended, and in some cases, we won't be doing as many replacements because we won't have as much need for them. We're going to be reducing part-time by about 30%. So that's about $130,000 off the budget. Parking lots that we replace on an annual basis through our budget, we're going to put that back on the capital improvement project list, and that'll have to be a competitive process, because that'll reduce about $200,000 from a budget a year. Contracted tree work, we also use contract foresters to help after storm events or to maintain pruning. So we're looking at reducing that contract by 60% to about $120,000. And then one of the offsetting, Lee is not here, so I'm glad he's not here. One of the things that we will be offsetting, that over $1 million reduction, is some planned increases in golf course fees by a nominal number. That'll offset about $135,000 of that $1.1 million, which ends up being about $960,000 in reductions in parks, trails, open spaces, cemeteries, horticulture, and forestry. So we're still looking at these things. So now on the recreation programming and facilities, we have already lost 3 positions, which I've mentioned in here in the past, and those positions will go through that, but to that budget reduction for 2026. That's roughly $250,000. But we've already kind of restructured around not having those positions. One of them was a facility maintenance position in SPL. We're going to have to see how we contracted a position like that, but it might mean, the facility doesn't look as clean when somebody comes in on a Monday morning, or because we will not necessarily have that amount of support overnight. We've eliminated 2 programmers in sports and recreation. So we're down from 4 last year to 3 this year. 2 resigned, and so that leaves 1 sports programmer. So we've already made some modifications to how we're doing things. So you have a question? Because I'd be glad.
Programming, what does that do?
They program adult sports and youth sports. So one person does both now. Yes, correct. Yes. And again, these are necessary reductions, and this may not be what next year looks like, what the year after, but at this point, we're not hiring the replacements for these. So we've restructured in a way that we think we can maintain a lot of this, but it's going to be definitely a stretch for us. And in the long run, it might be some reduction in sports. Now, the thing with sports programming, we're going to be looking at cost recovery and things like that. What makes sense to continue to do? What doesn't make sense to continue to do? What is a public value of some things, and how much should we be subsidizing from city versus private, or individual? So we're looking at all these cost recovery models and seeing what makes the most sense. So no long-term decisions have been made. Just know that we don't have three programmers. They weren't all doing sports, but one person does do both, to answer your question. Thank you. One of the other reductions that recently came from the rubrics, because we received results after the commission did the balancing act, and then they balanced that with the entirety. So we have a reduction in what in our recreation facilities, which potentially means that we'll be closing the community building for things other than programmed times. So Saturday basketball leagues will open, it'll be the 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 365 days a year that we may not be able to do. And that's a reduction of about $50,000 in that facility alone.
So that's no longer walk-in?
It would be no longer walk-in. The ones would be the other recreation centers.
And again, that's proposed, not a for sure thing yet?
It's not for sure until September 16th when the budget gets approved. The proposed budget will go to the commission on July 8th.
I do have that up there now.
Okay, here are the dates. July 8th is city manager's recommended budget, which will contain these cuts. And the hope in my discussion here is that this cuts out, so that there's an understanding of what these impacts are. And again, we are, as much as we can, sticking to the rubrics and the balancing act and honoring what the intentions were in that and the direction that we've been given with targets to cut, from each program.
Can I ask a follow-up question about the community building? Sorry.
I may not have the answer, so
Okay,
I reserve the right
so
to say that.
closing the community building, for what I understand, just for like program things, Saturday basketball, like you said, youth sports, whatever. So would that impact the people's jobs that work there, or would they be transferred to a different, does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Or Rock Chalk Park, or just curious about people's jobs.
At this time, even the programmers that are there, because they're not programming necessarily for that building or program, like the people that are housed, for instance, Gail, she doesn't only program there. So it's not a direct correlation. I will say that if somebody from the community building decided to resign today, we may not hire that position again because we're holding jobs right now. So not to have to do any drastic things in 2026. So the answer is not directly correlated, but it can happen as we're looking at how are we reducing our expenses. And that's not to say, well, we place somebody else in that position, but we're letting another position, be eliminated. So there's a little bit of strategy behind it. It's not this person leaves, that's a position that's left vacant, too bad, because it may be critical to be able to continue to deliver our essential services. So it's still a little bit of a chess game. But there's no direct correlation to that at this time.
Thanks.
All right. Oh, John?
Luis, the consultants recommended admission fees?
Yes. Yes. We're okay, so let me go through these because it'll answer your question in about a minute. All right, so closing the community building. The recreation centers, right now, those are the only city buildings open on city holidays. So by closing on city holidays, which are the few, the days that nothing else is open, it's about a reduction in $20,000 a year. Again, right now, we're open 365 days a year. So that combined is about $70,000 just for that, which is about 10% of the budget that we're asked to reduce. Potentially looking at reducing hours at Sports Pavilion, especially with the loss of our maintenance staff who needs to go in and turn the space around every night for the next morning. So we're looking at potentially adjusting the times to start later than 5:30. We haven't settled on that. It might be 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, which is consistent with the rest of our centers, but we haven't settled on that yet. But that's about roughly $20,000, another $20,000 reduction. And it's not all full-time, it's also part-time. We have to hire people to come in early in the morning, and so there's a little bit of combination. Increased user fees. Now, on a regular basis, annual, biannual, even within a year, we look at what we should be charging for our programs, whether it be yoga or whatever. So somebody who does yoga one year and does it another may not be paying the exact same thing, right? So as prices go up, the costs of materials and all that. So we'll be looking at some of those numbers again, as we should on a regular basis, so it's not a big shock 3 years later, hey, we haven't, so it's looking at gradual, sustainable growth. So between shelter rentals, daily admissions to our aquatics facilities rentals, and then program fees for classes and all that, we're expecting to generate about $100,000. So that reduces our liability in the programming section. And then new membership fees for access. We're being very conservative with a projection. We're still backing into that number of what we're looking at, maybe potentially a $500,000 revenue from that. So we're looking at how we program the use of our rec centers, who we charge, how much we charge. So we are actively now diving into that, and we will bring those ideas to the board. I'm hoping in June, before this goes to the commission in July. We'll have 2 meetings before, so we have the day right before the commission meeting, so that you have an idea of where we're going with these. in the entire process, we're looking at fairness, we're looking at being conservative, not just with our projections, but what we can expect from the community. We're looking at scholarship opportunities, pricing opportunities, so that we are not leaving anybody behind. So that is two things are realities. We need to charge fees, and we need to make it accessible for those who cannot. So that's the directive that I've given our staff as we're looking at this. And we want to look at our scholarship programs. We want to enhance those. We want to ask the public to support that. We do have a funding source for scholarships, but we hear anecdotally people that, hey, I'm willing to pay to help somebody else get in here. I can afford it, So, and then secondarily and I think it was mentioned here, try to remove obstacles or the stigma of applying for a scholarship. If you cannot, how do we want to have that kind of relationship where this is not, you're not asking for a handout. We want to provide access, and so we'll work on that as well as part of these changes. So we are looking at those. Again, we're looking at, several years of growth into this. It's going to be complicated for us. It's going to be new. It's going to be logistically different than what we've been doing, and systems-wise and all that. So we want to start simple, but start getting community accustomed to, okay, this is what this membership means to me. This is what the value is, and there is a value to it. And then grow that with greater discount, greater packages as time allows us. But it is absolutely going to negate some of the cuts that we have to do across the board. So even, as much as I don't hate to say that somebody who's paying to get into SPL is paying to mow grass at the golf course, the golf course is different. It pays pretty much for itself, not all the way. But they're also mowing, that same money, because it's general fund, is also going to eliminate some of the need for us to cut deeper into our parks, trails, and open spaces. So while we identify where the revenue comes from, it doesn't necessarily stay there, because there are some programs that we don't recover fully, and we need some of this money and then there's some others that do recover fully, and that money can be used. So we're looking at all that holistically at this point. We'll have some general ideas as asked by the commission by July, and then we'll continue to develop those all the way through September and all the way till implementation. So we'll have an implementation communication plan as well. And so that's about it. So in total, that totals, the $1.806 million. So again, the next thing that we're working on is developing these in preparation for the city manager's recommended budget, which goes to the commission on the 8th. And I'm assuming we'll have a long, lengthy meeting and talk through what these reductions mean. And then they have 2 more months to
So Luis,
finalize.
when you talk about admission fees, are we talking?
Membership fees is what we're calling them, to the recreation centers.
So to walk in the door is going to cost money?
Correct.
Okay.
I would just like to encourage you to come up with what those fees are going to be as soon as you can, and so that there's an opportunity for some community engagement around it.
Yes.
Because, people will have opinions, and you'll have a lot of objections, and I think being open to that is probably going to be better in the long run than not being open to public input on that.
If you've known me so far 10 months, I haven't kept anything to myself. Everything is out in the public sphere. So I will surely bring it here. I don't expect that we'll have it prepared by May. That's why I said June. There's not, but it will be brought into the public area. So what we don't want is to go down the same road that I understand happened 2 years ago, where we went from fees to it didn't make sense. It will make sense, because right now we're at a $1.8 million deficit. And this will allow us to only eliminate $1.3 million instead of 1.8, because that is our target. That is the direction we received from the budget office. And on April 1st, the commission said, yep, you're on the right track. So the only way we're going to do we're going to close the gap is to have a certain level. And I will say that the $500,000 that we're projecting is not what the consultants are saying. They're saying you can do a lot more based on trends, national trends, and your population and what your facilities are. We are choosing not to do that at this point. So I want to tread through this, carefully so that we're not, but I don't want to go back to where, well, we can't do this and we can't do that, because then we end up, then I'm going to have to find another $500,000 to cut. And I don't think anybody liked anything that I said already. So that would literally mean 500,000 more.
Are we exploring naming rights?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I mean, we're not exploring, but factoring that in, but that's for the sustainable future, right? It's not going to be right now.
Oh, I see.
It requires, either a consultancy to do that or a position to seek that. And it wouldn't be just naming rights, it'd be sponsorships altogether, an annual process of raising money, long-term, short-term. So, and that's one of the recommendations. I'm not saying that we're going to get that position, but I'm going to push for that position because it makes, makes sense. But that's, and I'm sorry, Marilyn, I just want to be frank that is just the reality. I want to be cognizant of what this community has grown accustomed to, but it's rare. If we don't do it, we're looking at $500,000 more in cut in this department.
Is that $500,000 net after new payroll costs to have cashiers or whatever systems?
We're hoping not to take cash at the door. We're not talking about cash. We're talking about monthly memberships, 6-month memberships, annual memberships, swap card. This isn't this type of deal. We do not have the capacity, nor does the city want us to be taking, $5 at the door for every. I mean, we do it at the pool. It's a very short season, but that's not the intention of how we do it. So we want to do it in a friendly way, that is cost effective, and we still have to look at that. I mean, there are modifications that we're going to have to make to some of the entrances, and we do have to take that into consideration.
I'm, I don't want to break apart the process right now, but there will be I'm thinking about, well, there's got to be some classes of individuals, children, age brackets, students, seniors, who may or may not have to pay. Well, I'm assuming that there will be a whole system and pricing to help, in addition to the scholarship idea, for equitability.
We'll have youth, likely, we'll have senior, we'll have household, we'll have individual. And those, as I mentioned, those will be expanded as we go through the process, especially as we see what the need is out there. But I think the best answer is yes, we want to make sure that even when we allow somebody to come in for free, we want to have a program for that, right? It's not just don't scan in, it's like, it's purposeful.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, how do we make it as accessible as possible? That's a goal. It is a goal of mine, we're developing it. We will bring it out. I know we can't do it in a vacuum. I don't know, that the level of do we do it, do we not do it is as it was a couple of years ago, because back then you can leave it and we weren't in financial peril, but if we don't, it really has an impact. And that's why, the commissioners have said a couple of times, yes, we want you to continue to pursue that because we have to. We have to. So anyway, that's my report.
I think that engagement will be important, including you'll probably hear from the private gyms in town who will then question, just question the whole idea of people having to pay to get in, and that makes you a direct does it make you a competitor with them, and how much business will they gain or lose? Those people are out there too, just FYI.
I mean, it's gonna be.
They'll probably be happy that you're charging, because if we charge more than they charge,
Which we wouldn't, I don't think
No.
we'd go more than
I was gonna
private
say,
club.
it's obviously, it's gonna be a huge cultural change. And,
Yep.
and you don't get to that without having conversations, many conversations.
And I think they've happened in the past, you know, my understanding is that they've happened, there's just hit roadblocks that time passes or it's not worth it, but
Well, the
again, I think it's,
roadblock
I think it's worth it.
was public outcry.
Right.
I mean, because it was going to move forward, and then we had a full house of people who told us that they could no longer use the facilities.
well, the argument
also-
is
And-
that one of the arguments was, it was at the beginning, when this all started, it was intended that there be no admission fee.
Right, but that was never codified, I don't understand, and I've had 15 conversations where I said, there was this promise, there was this promise, there was this promise. I'm like, the promise is not law. I mean, and right now, again, if we can find $500,000 somewhere else to cut without making further sacrifices, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. But we're identifying an amount that we think is achievable without too much undue harm, that helps us close that gap.
You had a question, Vicki?
Well, a statement. I guess I was feeling some discomfort, and I know this is the path, and I understand. I feel a little discomfort with sort of somewhat dismissive language around like people just being used to it. I don't think that's the case. I think our community has invested in these resources over time and feels loss around gated access when we've invested over time. And I think we have to honor some of that it's not just like, oh, we're used to, and a flippant kind of.
No, has grown accustomed to, right? It's like we're used to, but.
Yeah, but we invested, right? Like, that's why we're used to it. And I just feel like it's important to acknowledge that.
And I do hear it from
Yeah.
both sides. I hear
Yeah.
people charge. I do hear that. I didn't bring it in with the thoughts with me, but it's like, yeah, we went down that path, and we do. I just came out of the budget hearing, the budget committee meetings this morning, the employee, this afternoon, actually, employee and community, and they're like, yeah, you should, and we only want to charge what's appropriate to charge, right? It's, we're not trying to, gouge the public. It's just, this is what, if you want this, if you want this to continue, we have to, or there are greater sacrifices that will need to be made. And so, I know, I get it. I get both sides of this.
Yeah.
But I think what I've been asked to do,
Yep.
including from the commission, is look at how we can defray some of these by initiating some admission, or some membership fees.
And I think what is really important to me is the idea that our comparable cities,
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
and there's two facets to that, because our comparable cities, and we have them, we're doing our research with that, we're doing our research with the private gyms as well, making sure that, what their rates are. And remember, you can't take your 6-year-old there to play around at a private gym. You have to, but you can at one of our rec centers, so what's the value there for a family, rather than an individual who wants to work out? But, that was it, I lost my train of thought.
Comparable cities.
Yeah, so, and then just what the facilities that we have compared to those cities, because we're looking at your door and like, okay, well, they have this one, they do, so it's, and we want to see how we complement it. Are we talking about one center? Are we talking about all of them? And later on, we add in the aquatic center as a pack, again, we don't want to get too complicated. We can't. We don't have the time to do that, not by the budget crunch date, but exploring how we enhance those experiences along with time. And having some fees allows us to expand services. It allows it to, so at this point, it's about damage control through fees, but eventually it's like, how can we continue and enhance what we're offering through not having to cut into our reserves every year like we did this year. So.
I don't know that I have much of a question. I think I exhausted a lot of my questions, I think, last week when I was, I think one of the things as I look at, I guess this is a statement, but the proposed cuts is I want to be very mindful about its negative impact on young people. When I look at it, I'm seeing that one person is going to be running the recreation programs, and that, that scares me. We have lots of young families that use those programs, and so concerned about that. Concerned about closing rec center on city holidays, where if you go up, those times, those are busy times where kids are up there playing, and it's a safe haven for them. As a kid that grew up basically Holcomb Park raising me and the people that were inside there, that's something that's important to me. And so just, looking at this, I think that we need to be mindful of the cuts that we're making, and then of course the fees, obviously. We need to be mindful of its minimizing the negative impact on the kids that use these programs. That scares me. As a father that has 2 kids that are in rec programs, we use the facilities all the time. And then of course closing the community building. Kids that walk from middle school to, or wherever it may be, to use those. It bothers me a little bit. And so I just want to make that statement, but I do understand I understand all of this. Like, we're in a tough situation.
And what I kind of want to point back to, and I mentioned that, we're still going by the Balancing Act, and where we evaluated, this is where we are with the level of services. Yes, we can go to a 5, or we can go to a 1, and then the Balancing Act was the tool that was used to tell us, okay, reduce here. Now, we're minimizing some of the things that we said the next level down was, so it's not like we're doing it to the letter, but when we proposed 5% here and then 20%, they said, we'll do 13%, we have to land somewhere in the middle and what gets eliminated, but still holding to the Balancing Act, which, again, that was the expectation of this budget process was we're going to use this as a guideline. And believe me, the final numbers that everybody came with, those were still had to be massaged to reach our $8.6 million, or $6.5 million deficit. So we're not holding to the letter, and we're trying to minimize what we said we would have to do. So those small things, well, okay, if we close down here, we can get to these numbers that they told us based on what the city and the commission is prioritizing. Not what we're prioritizing as a department, but responding to what those priorities are. So as I mentioned last time, the proposed solutions, one of them is charging some fees so that we don't have to imagine another $500,000 that we had to eliminate, what that would mean. And then, the other factor that the commission would be deciding is what we do with the mill levy to minimize some of those other cuts, which are the things that can still change, in the end. But we've had that conversation as well, that, that's a tough road. So my hope in the conversations is to just make sure this is all out in the open. That's why I said I'll probably be doing a monthly one of these with you, as we, gives us time from one month to another between commission meetings to keep an update. But I think the worst thing would be, it's not to be transparent and not have communication, and then let this be a surprise when the budget is approved at the end of the year. So I'm trying to take the opportunity to put it out there in public, and believe me, I feel the pain more than you do. I mean, not really, not because but I do. I feel the pain.
Is there information out at the rec centers, or will there be as this progresses? So a user will be able to go in and pick up something or scan a QR code about why this is going on?
Yeah, we'll have an implement. Yeah, we're not even that far in the conversation, but I'll start, and we have identified that we will work with Corey Wallace and our communications office to start to do this, but I will tell you that just between April 1st and now is when we finally said, okay, this is direction. So that's more the confirmation that we needed in order to say, okay, even though we've been thinking and talking about thinking about doing, it's time to start crunching numbers and start communicating with the public. So, so yeah, that'll be not only between now and July when the budget is proposed, but even after, between then and September, when the budget still needs to be approved, and there's time for conversation in that too. So it doesn't end when the budget is, that's when the commission sees the numbers, and then there's still chance for dialogue.
Yeah.
So. All right, that is my report.
Public comment, if there is any. I don't think there is, but.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Okay.
And then public comment, just make sure there's no public comment online, or I just want to make sure it's on record anyway, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
There being none, we will go on to, I guess, director's report.
Okay, I have
Did you-
not much to say.
I was gonna say,
That has been
what do you
the
have
greater focus of my time. I will ask Mark, can you give an update on YSC, on the youth sports complex? Which is, okay, so there.
Sure.
I saw you didn't prepare you for this, so we can have some visuals, but.
It's okay. If you haven't been out by the sports complex, you need to run out there. So the 2 new turf fields are getting to where they're leveled, and you can see how big they are now. So they're putting the gravel down. Turf will come after that. There's concrete border around it. So it's getting pretty exciting, and you start to realize how huge these fields are going to be. So in the, we not only will have 2 full-size turf fields with lights, we're also adding a 3rd field, which will just be grass, but we'll have lights on it. So very, very big improvement to that complex. It's a little messy right now. That combined with the highway project kind of has us boxed in on 3 sides for construction. But
Did you go this weekend?
Oh, yeah, we're out there all the time.
yeah,
30 minutes to get in, 30 minutes to get out. Okay.
yeah.
I just got an email about that Saturday.
Unfortunately, the traffic thing is more highway related than it is access into the park. So here's some advice: go on the highway to get to the corner. Don't come down Wakarusa, because it backs up all the way to 23rd Street.
Oh, wow.
So,
Good strategy.
yeah, and it's,
Now everybody is going to hit that.
Sorry.
yeah, get out either up at Iowa or down at Clinton Parkway, and then come back to the complex to
Can't imagine
27th
being
Street.
a bicycle trying to cross this
Yeah.
highway then. Fun.
No, that's an exciting project. It's really.
And completion date is scheduled, or?
Summer, so we were June, but I think we're probably back to July because we had a little compaction issue on the soil. We had to do a change order to get a higher level of compaction, so. But summer, we're hoping that it'll be ready for the fall season, soccer and football.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Will those fields be available to rent for practices?
Yes.
Or are those just for games? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, based certainly on shared use for that, but.
So they're going to be striped for a full-size field on each of the 2, and then 2 cross fields on each. So there's 12 under full-size, and then the football we're tagging the fields so we can stripe the football on. So if we decide we want to have a football tournament, we can go paint the lines in for football. So it's really more multi-use than a lot of people think. It's not just soccer.
Very nice.
Mark, what about the lighting? I remember years and years ago when we were just starting the sports complex, and there were neighbors across, I don't know, across,
Yeah.
who were, complaining about the lights. Is there
Yes, so we're using all LED lights, which are much more focused down.
okay.
Yeah, so if you drive out there, we've converted almost all the sports complex to LEDs. So it used to be those metal halides that shine,
Yeah.
2 miles away. So there's only actually 2 fields out there, which are the far southwest fields that have the old lights on them. But yeah, all the new fields will all be LEDs. So if you go out by there and look at the adult softball complex, you don't even see those lights till you get up right almost to them.
Great.
Where before you could see them from many miles away. So it's kind of a nice upgrade.
Is that why the lights at KU Stadium, you know how
Oh,
I don't know that. I suspect those are LEDs also, but LEDs are kind of cool because you can really focus a certain spot on the field.
are you talking new ones or lights? Is that what those are?
They're new lights.
Jeez, I didn't know that. I see them from the freeway when you're getting off. I didn't realize they were lights. Okay.
I haven't seen those on yet, so I'm not sure how that'll impact the glow.
All right. Any other questions for Mark? Okay, so thank you. The only other thing I want to mention, it's tangentially related to this advisory board because we do maintain some of our downtown parks through transient guest taxes. And one of the things that we're trying to, and we'll have to talk about World Cup in here, to achieve for, potentially for the World Cup and after that is an increase in the TGT amount, which is paid by stays in hotels, heads and beds. So we're looking at doing some research about that as well, which has impacts to some of the activities that bring tourists into the community to spend more TGT and to spend money in Lawrence eating, dining, and shopping. So we're going to go down that path. And I think we've been given permission. It ranges from, I don't know, from 2 to 9 across the state. We're at 6%, so I think there's a little bit of room for growth there. This is the money that pays for part of the holiday lights down, because again, that's a visitor attractor. So some of the things come out, and not a lot of parks specific, but tangentially, since Mass is a park in a way, and so is South Park for sure. I think that's it for me for this.
Awesome. Any questions or comments? Anything from the public? Okay. All right. So then we move on to board items. Any other discussion items from the board?
You had those, yeah, I just thought we'd park those things on here. I did send out that article that you had sent on the Independence Pool, and then you had the book drop
Yeah.
that,
Did people get to see the article?
yeah, we sent you the article.
The reason I did, I just read it in the Kansas City Star, and I was thinking, gee, with all the attention that we pay to maintenance, looks what happens when you don't invest. You know, it was just such a good reminder to me, you know, losing the swimming pool into, I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know. So anyway, I just, and then on the book drops, the only reason why I had that was because we got such a nice compliment from the library about the collaboration or cooperation or whatever. I thought, oh, that's nice. So
Good, thank you. Thank you for sharing those things.
Thank you. Any other items from the board? I guess I will, just for my own part, mention that at my request, we've added the Lawrence Bike Plan engagement items to the calendar. That is there just for your reference. Hopefully, there's a lot of opportunities coming. Particularly excited that hopefully the Trails That Connect Us event has been rained out a couple of times in recent history at Free State Bottling Plant will actually happen this year.
Yeah, and we'll have a table there. We're also going to be represented there.
Oh, and I have to say, just sort of congratulations to Parks and Rec and Culture for winning the traveling trophy at the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Oh, yes.
Wow, you unseated the up to this point undefeated Sandbar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
Wow.
It's a big deal.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, that is.
So I have to say, I was so upset because I twisted my ankle the night before. So severely, I couldn't even get out of bed. So it was elevated. I missed it. I got pictures throughout the entire experience, but I was very disappointed, so,
You missed it. You missed a great parade.
thank you.
Okay, enough of me, my silliness. Anybody else?
Can we get Vicky's presentation scheduled?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
You had mentioned June, the user fees.
yeah,
Oh, no, not June.
So May, maybe?
Do you want to do it next month?
Sure, happily.
All right.
okay, and then I do want to add one thing that I think I just mentioned is the World Cup. I don't know that we've had the benefit as a group to kind of hear what the city and the county and KU are doing to prepare for it, what the impact will potentially be. We don't even know yet, but Ruth and I are both on the, I don't want to call it Incident Command Center, but on the planning committee for a lot of the events that'll surround World Cup, which we're still trying to develop with a team of people across the city and the county and KU. But I think we should do that presentation.
That'd be great.
We can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can do both those things in May, or we can shoot for that. We've done it plenty of times, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
anytime.
So that would be World Cup update.
Yeah, and you know, the city manager played soccer, I think, in college.
Yeah, I know, there's definite support. I mean, I don't think we will be impacted whether we want to or not, whether he played soccer or
You
college.
played.
It's gonna
Did you
happen.
play? Did you play?
No, I did not. No. But it's growing.
Yeah? What level?
All through high school and for the KU club team.
Oh, awesome,
All right. So it's gonna be a big deal here.
awesome.
And
If we get it.
Well, it's still gonna be an
That's kind of the misnomer, like whether we're a base camp or not, we are gonna have a ton of impact.
Oh, really?
It will be more fun, in my opinion, if we're a base camp, but they're projecting 650,000 visitors to the Kansas City area. And do you know the population of Kansas City? 500,000.
and one.
So, yeah, double.
So we should all turn our homes into Airbnb.
That's everyone's next comment, yeah.
Put a bed in my garage.
So, I mean, we're gonna have just a ton of people, no matter what.
Ooh, that'd be great.
So, yeah, that's why we're preparing so thoroughly at this point, so.
And when is that?
June and July of '26. And we will know whether we're a base camp, probably January, maybe as late as March, but of 2026.
So we need to make preparations regardless, right? We can't wait till then. So there'll be, we're planning as if they're gonna be here, and then we can scale back, but not knowing who it will be until almost the last minute.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what.
so we'll give a lot of information as to how we're going about that.
Yeah, that'd be great to
Yeah,
have.
we have a really exciting city
Insight.
and county incident command system, like, that was brought to, over COVID, that same model. So there are branches that are dealing with different.
This time it's about fun. We'll just say that.
Oh, right?
It's about fun.
Our branches.
Our branches. All right, but more information to come on that.
Awesome.
Okay?
Did you want to formalize, I know one time you had them do a first and second, and a vote. I think we can go ahead and just pencil those in for May without,
Oh, you mean with the,
without a
oh, yeah.
proxy.
Do you want to do a vote? Let's do a vote. Let's do, future
Do we have
agenda
a movement?
Motion for
to have our next meeting include
Vicky's.
Vicky and, talk about the health department, and Ruth, giving a presentation on the World Cup.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do it together.
So move.
Marilyn?
I would second
No.
that. All in favor? Anybody nay? So, yeah, we're
right.
unanimous.
Thank
Thank you. Any other,
Want to memorialize it if we need to, since we set the precedent.
Absolutely.
right,
Okay.
any other comments or items from the board? That being the last item on the agenda, Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
A second.
I got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
So much longer. It's
It always
necessary
is.
conversation.
Vicki, how long is your presentation?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Remember
For a
last
little
time
while.
we